Today, we're going to show the StatCast Player Metrics interface for Major League Baseball. The Player Metrics data is generated by a system of high-resolution optical cameras located at each MLB ballpark. Once the data is recognized and captured through the cameras, it is sent to the cloud. Data Server takes the data and makes it available to the Player Metrics application, which we'll be doing a demoing in a few seconds. As the game progresses, the statistics for active players will update. Note that it may take 15 seconds or more for the data to populate. The Player Metrics application will allow you to select and save the data from exciting plays that can be displayed during upcoming production moments. For example, this information could be saved and used for a replay during an inning break or during the next time the player is up to bat. This StatCast Player Metrics technology captures advanced information such as how fast a player ran, acceleration, route efficiency, etc. DakStats and AllSport are still used to capture play-by-play and scoring information. For example, the Pittsburgh Pirates used StatCast Player Metrics this past season to show the player's last at-bat highlight. The Pirates overlaid the stats saved from the Metrics application on a video of the replay. Now that you know the flow and have seen some examples, we'll go into a demonstration of the application. The Daktronics StatCast Player Metrics interface uses the Metrics application to show the data from StatCast Player Metrics feed. The interface breaks the player tracking information into categories. Batting and fielding separates the two teams. In batting, you'll be able to see the current batter and anyone on first, second, or third base. To view a description of a statistic category, hover the mouse over the titles. Detailed explanation of these stats can also be found at http://m.mlb.com/glossary/statcast. First arrow second is the time it took to go from first base to second base. Second arrow third is the time it took to go from second to third, and so on. In the fielding section, as people are involved in a defensive play, their stats will show up under the respective category. The StatCast technology determines what players will have information. If the player is not directly involved, no information will appear. We'll load up a test file to show an example of what the data will look like. Normally, as a game is ongoing, the data will change as plays happen. For this demonstration, we are using example files. The amount of stats that show up in the metric application are based on the play. If it is a short play where very little happens, you will have a minimal amount of stats. This is an example of a larger play where you can see 5 different defensive players were involved in the play. If you see an impressive stat that you would like to save and later displayed as RTD, simply click on that play in its respective row and column, and it will show up in the On Deck section. We can select several stats to put into the On Deck and mix and match batter and fielding stats. Data will always be changing in the batting and fielding sections. When a new play happens, the previous data will disappear and will be filled in with new data. It does not get saved in these sections. To save data, click on the cell and it will populate in the On Deck section. This is for saved information that can later be used on your display. There are 36 cells in the On Deck section to populate with saved stats. You can also select an entire row by clicking on the player's name. After the cells are filled in, you can no longer select stats to populate into the On Deck section. If you want to clear a cell, simply right-click on that cell and that stat will disappear. All other stats will shift to the left when stats are removed. You can also simply clear all stats in On Deck by selecting Clear. We will select a few stats to put into the on deck from both batting and fielding. And now we'll change the file to simulate an additional play occurring. We can also select some stats from this play as well to add to our on deck. Next, let's output this information for display use. Remember, this populates at a 15-second delay, so an ideal time to use this might be at a half-inning break or when the feature player is next up to bat. If we click on cells in the on-deck section, they show up in the output section. Click Send Output to send all stats into the output section, out as RTD. To verify this, we go to the Data Monitor tool to see the stats that we sent out. Note, if Send Output is clicked while no statistics are shown in the output area, the previous data will be overwritten by spaces, effectively blanking the Data Monitor and any data on the display. Now, we'll send out 4 stats and then select just 2 stats to send out. This will clear the other 2 stats that are not in your second output. So in the Data Monitor, you will only have the last 2 stats that you sent out. Port configuration can be found by clicking on the bottom left green circle. Here are the recommended settings. Name, enter a descriptive name for the output. Port type, leave this set to file. Path, enter the directory and XML file name in which to save the XML file from StatCast. Note, this cannot be a mapped network drive. If the file resides on a different computer that needs credentials, those must be entered through the Service Manager with the correct domain access. Interval. Enter the number of seconds to write the XML file. If set to 0, only changes to the file will be written. This is preferred. Hosted file. Leave this option unchecked. Encoding. Leave this set to default. The output settings can be found by clicking on the bottom right circle. The settings are typically protocol. Leave this set to UDP. UDP broadcast. Keep this option checked. Port. Enter the port number on which the statistics will be sent out. The default port is 21004. This will typically stay as is. Click OK to accept changes or cancel to discard the changes. Content creation for StatCast Player Metrix is very similar to StatVision. There are a lot of stats available and it is displayed through templates. We will show you one player doing one stat, one player showing 2 stats. An example of that is here, where you can see the catcher's arm strength and pop time, or show the fielder showing the distance covered and route efficiency. Or you can make another template using just one piece of content or template. One content template can be used in these examples. The player name will come across as RTD. The stat category will come across as RTD, and the unit the stat metric is measured in will also be available in RTD. The template would be created in Content Studio. Here are some examples of graphics with the player metrics fields. When creating display sequences, note that the template file shows up to 10 metrics, but the metric application can only output 8 at one time. There are also many reserved data fields that will not be available until future releases. Here is how an operator would save and output 2 pieces of data for a player. First, it is helpful to load a file with data if you are not in an actual game. Imagine during a game, you want to show 2 stats for the batter. Click on the 2 stats so they are saved on deck. As you get ready for the producible moment, click on the stats located in the On Deck section to send them to output. Hit Send Output to send it as RTD. To verify, the data monitor shows the same player in both sets of data. The only difference is the stat that we have clicked on. The data is ready to be displayed. The show control operator simply needs to play out the content template when the time is right. Here is another scenario. Let's show two stats, each for the base runner and fielder. First, clear out the previous RTD. Select Clear and click on Yes. Grab stats and bring them to the Output section and hit Send Output. Open Data Monitor and you can see two stats for two different people. Two stats will be for the base runner and two for the fielder. We are showing stats for two different people. The first two stats are for the base runner and the next two stats are for the fielder. Note, a different content template would be needed for this to display both players' names and their stats.